r/explainlikeimfive. ELI5. How can the U.S. power grid struggle with ACs in the summer, but be, allegedly, capable of charging millions of EVs once we all make the switch? You can carry 20 boxes over a period of an hour, but you can't carry 20 boxes all at once. AC is blasting pretty much all at the same time, whereas car charging is a bit more spread out. The major difference is that air conditioning demand all hits pretty much at once during the hottest hours of the day. But electric vehicle charging tends to be a slower trickle spread across many more hours. We would need to upgrade electrical infrastructure to handle the extra demand if everyone switched to electric cars. But we need to do that anyway. Quick answer is EVs tend to charge a night off-peak. So peak power needs would be largely unchanged. But total power needed would increase about plus 25%, which frankly wouldn't be that hard to increase overall production that much. And that there is a point of view that's missing from the comments. It takes a tremendous amount of electricity to refine crude oil into gasoline. Texas's #1 user of renewable energy by far is the oil industry example. Take the 5 kW needed to refine a gallon of fuel and distribute it to the end user to power their car or home. Instead of burning it to throw away 70% in heat and CO2, and suddenly what do you know? There's no shortage of electricity at all. Air conditioners consume about 4 kW per hour and tend to do so all at the same time. Mega hot day. It's not every day. It's not all day, but tends to overwhelm the grid because the grid isn't designed for that load requirement. Electric cars will consume at a similar or even higher rate, but will do so predictably and regularly, so the grid will be prepped for it. And T-Bay will largely do so at night. To expand capacity for 100% electric cars would take about 10 years, and 100% electric cars is at least 30 years away. That the grid can't take it is an anti-electric car myth propagated by media hit pieces. Media outlets whose biggest customers for ads are legacy car makers and oil companies. Don't believe the hype. AC is turning on all at the same time of day in every house. People charging their cars won't be charging every single day in every house, and they'll be charging at night when there's less strain on the grid. Nighttime is when most vehicles get charged. At least where I live. Because utilities offer lower rates overnight. And because that's when the cars aren't being driven. There's exceptions, of course. I don't know which scientists you heard claim that. They might have been EV company salesmen or scientists from an unrelated discipline. Anybody who knows a thing or two about energy systems will tell you that ongoing electrification of transportation brings with it massive challenges, though not insurmountable ones. 1. Most people charge at night. There is not a lot of demand at night, usually, as a lot of industry is closed. People are sleeping. Power plants have a hard time changing how much power they generate. They have to figure out how much power people will need, and then always produce that amount, even during hours when most people aren't using any power. This means there is a lot of wasted power. EVs are very helpful because they give a place for that extra power to go. EVs are charged with that power that would have been wasted. I have a friend who manages power generation for plants in the Northeast. He is routinely frustrated by how much power is wasted to make sure there is enough during peak hours. He tells me all the time how he needs more people to buy EVs so he has a place to put all the excess power that goes down the drain. EVs typically charge overnight. Air conditioning and high-power appliances like stoves and dryers do not run during this time. My kids owned an EV when they lived here. It used about 1/50th the amount of juice to charge as my 5-ton AC unit. I am just curious. If my electricity is produced by natural gas, wouldn't that mean my car is essentially powered by natural gas? I am sure there's an 18-minute YouTube video explaining how it's different, but I've recently wondered. On the AC peak times, solar cells don't charge all the time, but they are at their best at the same time the A/second are pulling their hardest as EVs become more commonplace. So will rooftop solar. Furthermore, the people who are more likely to have EVs are also the ones who are more likely to have PVs. It should balance out over time. Short answer is similar to the answer to the question, how come we can fly a helicopter on Mars but can't keep Texas's lights on? Single quote. Simply put, scientists and engineers are in charge of Mars. Politicians are in charge of Texas. The U.S. power grid doesn't struggle to keep up with ACs. The Texas grid does. But that's because Texas refuses to integrate its grid so that it doesn't have to comply with National Electric Reliability Council standards. EVs charge at different rates at different times. Not every single car is going to pull 12 kW. My car is a edge case, but I slow change at 800 W all night. That's less than a microwave. Most EVs can be programmed to start charging at a specific time. Likely to take advantage of tiered electricity. Considering the average American drives something like 20 miles one way, most daily driver EVs can get away with an hour or two charging at night. Going forward with this logic, I can see smart plugs or EVSEs being used by utility companies. They can turn on chargers in phases as to not overwhelm generators. I imagine this mind experiment technology can be manually bypassed. Like if you absolutely need a full charge before a morning road trip. It would be slowly upgraded as the demand materialized. Although many providers charge higher rates during summer afternoons explicitly to discourage users from running electrical demands during that time, and provide incentives to charge EVs at night. It's not like people are charging the whole battery every night. More like 10 to 20% for most people. Also at night when there is less demand. EVs are a very flexible demand. Charging doesn't have to happen as soon as you plug in for most cases. That allows the load to be shifted away from peak hours. That's very valuable to the electrical grid and why utility company are already willing to pay customers for this demand response capability. EVs can be charged nighttime to balance the load. This reduces the need to have to use less efficient methods of channeling excess overnight electricity such as steam storage or reservoir pumping. Because we haven't all made TH switch yet, and that switch is gradual so the grid can catch up with demand. The AC use is all at once right now since the demand and the AC exist. My husband does R&D for a power company and they are currently working towards making EVs sort of backup batteries that can support the grid while they are plugged in. Essentially, you would be able to sell energy back to the grid if the battery on your EV is charged. A 100% switch to electric vehicles isn't happening overnight. It will take many decades at minimum. And electrical grids will slowly adapt. Parked cars also don't need to all charge at the same time. They can do it at night when electricity usage is low, and spread out the load over 8+ hours. The same doesn't apply for air conditioning on a hot day. Peak demand for power is late afternoon. That is when all the AC is on. EVs typically charge at night, and are incentivized to do so by lower rates. Nighttime consumption by EVs is still tiny compared to afternoon consumption by ACs. Subscribe for more content.